I can't count the reasons I should stay. One by one, they all just fade away. I'm Brian Downs. This is Pro Sex Studio, the channel where I discuss the sexual subtext in popular films and television shows, and in this episode, we're talking about Community, the sitcom that ran famously for 6 seasons in a movie. In keeping with the academic standards of Greendale Community College, go human beings, I'm doing this without notes, without preparation of any kind, straight from memory. But that's okay because I've seen every episode about 3 times. What is Community saying about sexuality? Is the overall message positive or negative? Well, let's take this one character at a time, shall we? Starting from the least consequential and moving up to the most consequential. Number 1, Pierce Hawthorne. Pierce is presented as being ridiculous. He's a ridiculous old man. He's 2 steps behind everybody. His thinking is out of date. And he likes sex. He's always pursuing it. He's interested in it. He tries to flirt with people. He tries to have sexual relationships. And every time he does, it's presented as Pierce being stupid again. He's pathetic and he's ridiculous because he likes sex. It's ridiculous that he's interested in sex. He's got white hair. And he tries to get it and always makes a fool out of himself, and in the course of the entire series doesn't ever get any that I recall, maybe that one time with the paid escort who then rejected him afterward. So Pierce is, start to finish, the negative meme, your problem is sex. There are 12 negative memes that are seen very often in movies and television that are designed to make you feel anxious about your own humanity, and this is a common one. Your problem is sex. When a protagonist, if Pierce can be called a protagonist, is interested in sex and sexuality, is pursuing it, that is a character flaw of theirs, something that they should overcome, get over, abandon. That's Pierce Hawthorne. Moving on to the next, Abed Nadir. Now Abed, of course, is practically asexual, shows very little interest in sexuality at all. That's fine. Has a girlfriend for a minute. He meets her in the coat check room that she improvised at a school event. I forget what her name was. We never see them in bed together. They barely ever kiss. Mostly their relationship is about friction between them. And that whole plot line is abandoned in an unusual way. Mark Harmon is a towering genius. So much for that. That's probably serious people don't sex. You know, Abed is the shaman of the group. He is the heart of the whole endeavor, and he doesn't have a sex life because you don't want your heroes to have sex lives. Next up is Shirley. Shirley was married to Andre at the beginning of the series, and her relationship with Andre is on again, off again. They reunite, and then they split up again, and you don't see Andre again. By the end of the series, Shirley is not in a romantic or sexual relationship with anyone. She rarely ever discusses wanting sex. Occasionally she remarks that someone else is attractive. I think she remarks that Winger is attractive once or twice, but that's always played for a joke. It's funny. Shirley has children. Andre is the father of those children, and that's kind of Shirley's deal, her character. She's a mother and homemaker, and she's trying to improve her position in life by getting a degree at Greendale in business, I think it was, or some other very practical endeavor. There is one episode in a later season which is a flashback to their lives just before Greendale, and in that episode we see Shirley coming out of a lingerie store in a mall. She has got a package. She's talking to Andre, who is at that time her husband. She's talking to Andre on the phone. She's clearly excited. Ooh, baby, I'm going to come home tonight and we're going to get together. She's obviously looking forward to an intimate encounter with her own husband in her own home. This is the most socially acceptable kind of sex you can have. But before that episode is over, Shirley learns that Andre has betrayed her. And how has he betrayed her? By going to bed with a stripper, right? This is what breaks people up in movies and television. It's always infidelity. No one ever says, or very rarely is it something like, hey, we drifted apart, or you're rude to me, or any other thing. It's always sex. Sex destroys relationships. It doesn't create them. It doesn't keep them together. It destroys them. And that's what happened here. This is the negative meme, danger is sex, where sex is always presented as dangerous, sinister, leaving destruction in its wake. In that episode, the flashback episode, we see Shirley throw the package from the lingerie store into the garbage. She rejects her sexuality. like so. The one time we see Shirley going, "Ooh, gonna have some fun tonight with my husband," bam, then her life is shattered. She doesn't get to have any fun. Danger is sex. Your problem is sex. Also, another negative meme is called the wanting disaster. Characters who want sex and pursue sex and have sex, something terrible happens to them. She was in a relationship with Andre. That relationship happened in the bedroom. Boom. Her life is shattered. And Shirley never recovers. She's kind of back and forth with Andre. At the end of the series, or by the time Shirley exits the series, she's not in a relationship. She's not married to somebody else. She is alone. Britta Perry. Britta is presented as having a passionate sex life, a varied sex life. In fact, she has so many sex partners that barely get names. In the darkest episode of Community, which I think is in season 2 or 3, Abed and Troy have met a guy who's played by an actor who was on Dollhouse. He's a new student, and they're hanging out with this guy. They're making friends, and Britta is attracted to him. And Abed and Troy say, "Oh, no, please don't date him. If you date him, somehow he won't be our friend anymore. It will ruin it," which is another thing that happens a lot. Dangerous sex. Sexual relationships are presented as somehow damaging your non-sexual relationships. If Britta decides to go to bed with this week's guest star, then that will damage her relationship with Abed and Troy somehow, and it will damage Abed and Troy's relationship with the guest star. But hey, it's okay, because Britta has an encounter with this guy. I don't think they go all the way, but certainly they get pretty passionate. And she discovers that he, in fact, is an Eastern European war criminal, guilty of genocide, having cleansed a few villages in his native Eastern European country. That's dark stuff. Dangerous sex. The wanting disaster. This happens to Britta a lot. Of course, a lot of the theme of the show is Britta and Winger. Should they, shouldn't they? The whole pilot, the whole first season is about should they, shouldn't they. They're obviously attracted to one another. Eventually, they do have sex, and they carry on a secret sexual relationship. The first time they do it, of course, is during the paintball episode in season 1. They fall into each other's arms. Camera cuts away. We don't get to see any of the fun, really. Cut back to Winger relaxing. Britta gets up, grabs up a paintball gun, points it at Winger. We go directly from that intimate encounter to betrayal, treachery, violence. The wanting disaster, dangerous sex. Anyway, they do carry on a bit. They have a secret relationship for a while. When the group finds out about it, there's a whole episode based around that. The group literally says to them, "How could you do this to us? Your problem is sex. You know what we're upset about? Your sex life. How about it's none of your damn business?" But no, and by the end of the episode, by the way, it is apparently so much the study group's business that Winger and Britta agree to stop sleeping with each other. Now, notice this. This is carried on later in a later season when Greendale is going to be sold off. The campus is going to be sold. The place is being shut down. And Winger says to Britta, "Let's get married." And Britta says, "Yeah, let's do that." And then they're going to do it on the study room table. They're locking the doors to do it. But the rest of the gang runs in and says, no, we can save Greendale. There's buried treasure under the campus. We're going to find it and we're going to save Greendale. Annie literally comes to tears in this episode at the idea that Winger and Britta are going to get married. Winger and Britta are married. Winger is clearly the most important man in Britta's life. Britta is the most important woman in Winger's life. They know each other very well. They are attracted to one another. They have a sexual history together. They socialize constantly. It's apparently a rare day that they don't see each other. They go to one another for counsel and support and advice. They are, in effect, married. What the gang is actually preventing is them having a sexual relationship. That's what upsets Annie. And we're going to get back to Annie later. So it's all about Winger and Britta shouldn't go to bed with one another. They can confide in one another. They can spend all this time together. They can be best friends. But they absolutely shouldn't have sex, because serious people don't sex. That's another negative meme. People who have responsibilities and so on should be celibate. Also, sexy celibates is another negative meme we see here. We're going to talk more about that in a moment. So Britta, of course, has a relationship with Subway, the man named Subway. This leads to Subway's expulsion from campus and the loss of his job. Subway comes back later using a different name. He was legally named Subway because he was part of a marketing team for Subway sandwiches. He and Britta have a rekindling of their relationship, also ends in disaster. By the end of the show, Britta is not in a relationship with anyone. Why not? She's a good-looking woman. She's sincere and wants to help people. She's quirky and charming. Why isn't she? She could be. There's no reason she can't, but she's not. Winger. Winger, of course, likes sex. He likes it. He seeks it out. He's very much like Pierce that way. The only difference is that Winger is good at it. Winger is handsome and glib and tall and so on, and he has no trouble finding sexual partners who, incidentally, seem to like the encounters they have. It's implied that Winger has casual encounters with a number of women, and nobody ever complains. Nobody ever says Jeff Winger's a jerk who misled me or lied to me or treated me badly. Winger has a relationship with a professor. I can't remember her name right now. He gets his heart broken. He's sincerely interested in her, and she dumps him. She's a terrible person. And Winger has his thing with Britta, which is mostly celibate. Again, the show presents their relationship as when they don't do it, everything's fine. And Winger, again, like Pierce, interested in sex, pursues sex, but Winger can get sex, and that's why Winger is pathetic and ridiculous. Pierce is pathetic and ridiculous because he wants sex and can't get it. Winger is pathetic and ridiculous because he can get it. Also, Winger clearly is attracted to Annie. So this brings us to the two most important characters regarding sexuality on Community. Troy and Annie. Let's begin with Troy. Look at Troy. Literally look at Troy. About 5'10", dazzling smile that he deploys for any occasion, big brown eyes, six-pack abs, athletic. It was a high school athlete, right? So strong, agile, young. He's between about 18 and 23 during his time on the show. Friendly, fun-loving, outgoing, self-confident. Why aren't girls climbing on Troy like first prize is on the top of his head? Why not? He's very attractive. But that doesn't happen. They have a plot line where Annie is attracted to him, but they devote an entire episode to why Troy and Annie shouldn't be a couple. Troy tries to date once or twice, and nothing comes of it. Troy has no relationships. The only exception is he's in a relationship with Britta. He and Britta wind up as lovers. Everybody hated that. The audience did not respond well. It never made any sense to me. I don't see them as a couple. There's a big gap in their ages. Britta is kind of pseudo-intellectual, very kind of even stridently driven about political matters. Troy doesn't care about politics at all. Troy is not intellectual. Troy somehow transforms from high school jock to community college, nerd. It doesn't give a damn about politics. Troy just wants to watch movies and play games with Abed. Now, people are going to say, well, Abed is Troy's life partner. Well, certainly they're good friends. They live together. They are obviously very close. But they're not in a romantic or sexual relationship. The show hammers on that point. They are not lovers. They're just really, really good friends. And that seems to simultaneously shut off the chance that they will have a lover outside that dynamic. So again, sexy celibates. How the heck is it that Troy doesn't have a lover? He's extremely attractive. He's a nerd, big deal. There are nerd girls around here who would love to be Troy's girlfriend. How is this happening, right? He's involved with Britta. That is not a very productive relationship, doesn't last very long. And there's an episode where Troy has to basically have a psychotic break where he switches bodies with Abed or pretends to, or whatever. The line between real and fantasy and Community is thin. But essentially, Troy has to have a psychotic break to work up the nerve to break up with Britta for no particular reason. By the way, there's nothing. You stole my bank card. You banged my best friend. No, it's just this kind of isn't working out, and never made a ton of sense anyway. And the message about Britta and Troy is they shouldn't be dating. Again, they shouldn't. Britta shouldn't be involved with Subway. Britta shouldn't be involved with Winger. Britta shouldn't be involved with Troy. Shouldn't. No. And now we get to the most important character, Annie. Annie is very similar to Troy, right? Warm-hearted, friendly, caring, hardworking, ambitious, intelligent, well-educated by the standards of her community. But of course, she's also quite young. You can't blame her for not having a PhD when she's 20 years old. Hardworking, many good attributes. Oh, and remarkably beautiful. Why aren't boys lining up for Annie's attention? She's terrific, right? Who wouldn't be a little too uptight, a little nervous, but okay, nobody's perfect. Why aren't boys lining up for Annie's attention? There's no one. There's no one. There's a episode devoted to how she shouldn't be involved with Troy. She dates Vaughn for a minute, but all we hear from her about that is, I have not slept with Vaughn. He said we could take it as slow as I want. We never hear any change of status on that. And he tells us that she had sex once with her high school boyfriend. He cried afterward. He cried during. He's gay now. So that is not presented as being fun or fulfilling or pleasurable. It was, extremely awkward. And I guess unpleasant might be a word you would use. So why doesn't Annie have people lining up to go out with her? She doesn't. Nobody. Her big through line is that she shouldn't act on her attraction to Jeff, and Jeff shouldn't act on his attraction to Annie. The alternate characters from the darkest timeline, the alternate universe community squad, who are the evil versions of our lovable band of misfits, they show up. That Annie, bad Annie, is in a passionate relationship with Jeff Winger. It's villains who sex. This is another common negative meme. The bad versions of them are in a sexual relationship. The good versions of them aren't. And at one point, Annie is being stalked through the campus by her evil alter ego who says, oh, in the darkest timeline, we're sleeping with Jeff and we love it, which inspires good Annie to leap out and zap her foe with a laser gun or whatever and send her back to where she came, saying, nobody sleeps with Jeff, not even me. So Annie's casting herself in the role of Jeff's cock blocker. Why shouldn't Annie and Jeff date? Jeff is older. Okay, there's an age difference. But they clearly are attracted to each other. They spend a lot of time together. They go to each other for help and counsel. Everyone around them is like, what is going on with you two? Get a room already. They have compatible sexual orientations. Jeff is a good friend to her. Jeff is a man with his flaws, of course. Nobody's perfect. Also, it's a comedy, so people tend to have flaws. But there's no really good reason that they shouldn't be lovers. Except, don't is the absolute theme of this whole show. They can't. They kiss one time. At the end of the show, Annie is leaving. Jeff is staying with a teaching position, which is portrayed as a fate worse than death. They kiss one time. Annie says something like, I'm 22, I'll regret it for the next 5 minutes or something, I'll get over it. So Annie even frames that kiss before it happens as something to regret. Dangerous sex, just negative message. Why isn't Annie in a relationship? Because serious people don't sex, because our heroes can't be in these relationships. Jeff's flaw, Britta's flaw, Pierce's flaw is that they're interested in, pursue, and sometimes have sex. All the way through, Community promotes celibacy. And especially among those you're closest to. Again, Jeff and Britta are really kind of functionally married. They spend a lot of time together. They know each other very well. They help each other all the time. They have had a sexual relationship. They are attracted to one another. But don't. Keep your clothes on. Must. The people you should especially never go to bed with are your closest friends, which I think is a poisonous and venomous message to deliver to the public. In fact, your closest friends ought to be the first candidates on the list for potential lovers. All the way through this show, sex is presented as dangerous, weird, stupid. People who want it are foolish. People who have it suffer disasters. Dean Pelton, of course, is a runner-up. His sexuality is never clearly defined, but is often presented as bizarre and silly when he bursts in a costume and then pretends that this women's costume he's wearing belongs to his sister and he's been forced by circumstance to wear it. No, he likes to put on these costumes, obviously. But again, his sexuality is presented as weird and bizarre and off-putting and something just kind of tolerated by his friends, because what else are you going to do? This show pounds away at that message, like a lot of shows do, like a lot of movies do. Our culture is designed to teach you to hate your own sexuality, and you pay for the subscription. I'm Brian Downs. This is Pro Sex Studio. Thank you for watching.